Hello and welcome to the Mastermind, Body, and Spirit Show. I am your host, Matt Belair. Today's guest has been speaking and coaching on the power of words and language for the past decade. He is the co-founder and lead presenter of Pro Cabulary. He is a TEDx speaker, a former elementary school physical education teacher, and holds a master's degree in international education. He loves to travel, dance, and practice martial arts when he is off the clock. Welcome to the show, Mark England. What's up, brother?
Matt, everything good, man, and including this show. Thank you very much for having me on, and yeah, I've been very much looking forward to this.
Yeah, man, me too. I've heard lots about you. Super stoked, and I want to get into the TED Talk. I definitely want to see that. But you're starting the day off learning an interesting personal lesson. You know, taking the tools of the Pro Cabulary course into your own life. Do you want to just start with what happened to you today, and then we'll get into a little bit about your background?
Yeah, sure. So my car got stolen this morning, and I had a presentation to be at 8 o'clock for a very cool networking organization here in Richmond called Synapse. I'm friends with the founder, and I walk out. I now own the "Did my car just get stolen?" face. I walk out, look at where my car was parked. We're in a nice neighborhood. Look at the vacant parking spot. Look over my right shoulder. Look back. Look up. Look down. And in about 4 seconds, put the thing together. Called my dad. Called Keith. I said, "Hey, dude, I got to take care of this thing. Something's happened. I hope I can make it." And the police came, filed a report. I was able. One of the reasons why we're bringing this up is the ability for me and essentially anyone to be able to focus and keep the drama level low. We navigate situations better, generally speaking. And I was able to do that this morning. I kept my story short in Pro Cabulary fashion, and I was 11 minutes late to my presentation. And yeah, so all's well that ends well. And it's a decent story. Very interesting way to start the day.
Yeah, man. I had that. I had that experience one time when I was selling cars in Calgary, and my friends like to mess with me, and they give me a call when I have my day off, and they say, "Hey, Matt, your car's stolen." I'm like, "Yeah, right. Like, whatever. Like, no, seriously, dude." And then so they kept saying that. I didn't believe them. I was like, "Take a picture of where I parked it. Like, take a picture of that and send it to me because I bet you're gonna." So they send a picture. My car's not there, and he goes, my friend's just like, "Seriously, man. Every other day I'd be messing with you. You should probably call the police." It's like, oh crap. So I had that too. It's a weird feeling. It's like, I guess the challenge is like what's inside. That's as long as you don't have anything personal and sentimental in there.
This would be a stretch for most audiences. I doubt it for yours. 2 weeks ago, I look at my gym bag, Fairtex. All I've had, I had all my kickboxing equipment in the back, and I've been using Fairtex equipment for the whole time I've been doing kickboxing, and I very much love them. They've been a big part of my life, and I very much appreciate what they do as far as the products they create and their ethos. And my gym bag was in tatters, and I was thinking to myself, I could get new equipment because it was all just worn in and leathery like an old pair of shoes. And I thought that a couple of times throughout the day about 2 weeks ago. And now that I'm sitting here on your podcast, which is very magical, I'm thinking to myself, was the universe listening? We'll see.
Yeah, man. Yeah, well, I get that, man. It's interesting because I read the bio that you sent over, and I didn't realize you were a martial artist as well, which is you start to love your gloves, you love your equipment, and so if they're gone, it's like you can upgrade, but there's definitely something special. Like my dad had this old leather bag mitts that I still use, and they're awesome, and they're just kind of
awesome.
like an old baseball glove.
So exactly what they're like, yeah.
Yeah, you have a background in martial arts, education. We're pretty similar on a lot of fronts. Do you want to give the audience like a little bit of background about, some of your history, what you've been up to, and how you got to where you are today with the Pro Cabulary course, which I just finished. Really amazing. I'll go into the power of words for sure. We're going to talk about that today, and language. And I really love the beginning. I don't want to. Well, I'll just get into it. You know, that the first lesson with abracadabra, with my word I create, which is so true. And everything that I've ever read in personal development or spirituality, somewhere in those books they're going to talk about words. And so what you've done is you've made it really clear and concise and powerful. So that's my statement. And just if you want to give a little bit of background on how you got to creating something like that.
Sure thing. Two of my favorite subjects, martial arts and language, power of words. Well, let's start with martial arts because they segue right into Thailand, which is very much part of the story. So I started wrestling when I was 13, freshman year in high school, and wrestled through high school. And I went to when I went to university, one of the classes that I had to take was a physical education class. And the first day we went in, the guy he was very cool, and he at the end of the class he said, "Are there any wrestlers in the room?" And I raised my hand and I said, "Yeah, I am." And he said, "We are training." This is in 1997, spring of '96. He said, "We're training Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu." And I had seen the UFC, so I was like, "Oh, that's interesting." He said, "You should come and check it out." So I did, went into class, and I got choked immediately. And something clicked. Wrestling for me, it was cool. Okay, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the grind and the challenge. And pinning people was okay. But there was something completely different about administering a choke. The first thing I got choked with, it was very basic, extremely. Hand in the throat and then pull down on the back of the neck. And I didn't know what to do. So I said, I got to learn this stuff. So and the guy's name was Paul Creighton. He ended up fighting in the UFC and contesting BJ Penn for the lightweight title many years later. I practiced Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and Thai boxing in college, and we were all competing in mixed martial arts. And so I had 6 MMA fights and then some kickboxing fights. And I had, when the conversation about synchronicities shows up, this is one of the most profound synchronicities that I've ever had. It was a transcendental experience. So out of 4.5 years in college, I opened 2 emails from career services. One the first week of school and one the last week of school. I probably got 200 between those two emails that I opened. And the first one, I have no idea what it said. The second one, though, that last week of school, I just had this pull, it was like a pull to open that email. And as you can imagine, I'm graduating and I've got a million things on my mind. And I opened it and it said, "Teach English in Thailand." And I read the title. I looked up, I looked back down, read the title, and that was it. I'm going. I went to my girlfriend, who was she was the daughter of a Southern Baptist missionary, and they had lived all over the world. So they had seen, I was just some guy from Virginia. I didn't even have a passport, and they had lived in all these exotic places, and their stories had gone to work on me. So the 3 things that got me to say yes that quick was martial arts, listening to all of their stories, and I was going to go down to the Outer Banks and wait tables. It's a vacation spot in North Carolina. So I had roughly the next 4 months of my life planned out. No job, nothing lined up. So I looked at that opportunity and I said yes. And the plan was, and this is what I led into the TED Talk about a couple of months ago, is that I wanted to go pro as a fighter. That was it. And once I made that decision, the plan was to move to Thailand, train for a year, move back and go pro. So we moved to Thailand, and I got the exact opposite of what I was expecting. I had my second knee surgery over there. I got busted up training, uh, and had my second knee surgery. And the guy told me, he was like, "Listen, man, it's over. It really is." Quote, "Your career as a kickboxer is over, period. You can become a very good swimmer, period." And that news coming from that person that I gave a lot of power to at that point in time, he was the authority on me instead of me being the authority on me. Little difference there. And it felt like I got hit with a hammer, and I was in a lot of pain, man. And there was also, I was very emotional at the time about the whole scenario. So that played into how my body was reacting, and I believed him, and I turned into a very bitter individual. I didn't laugh for a year. It's a very strange experience. My face, even with even with stuff that it was funny then, I would definitely laugh at it now. My face literally, it couldn't get into the position to smile and to
Wow.
laugh. Yeah, yeah. And I took a look down that road, Matt, and at I'm very thankful for having the the amount of awareness. You pick your word. I recognized that I can be that way for a long time. I thought to myself, you can be bitter and twisted, Mark England, for the rest of your life. You can gnaw on this bone for as long as you want. And if you do it for a few decades, then man, what a waste. So I started uh, I started working on my physical health, and I went down to a fasting and detox resort in the Gulf of Thailand. It's called the Spa, and they did Arise and Shine programs, 7 to 10 day intestinal tract cleansing programs. It's cleansing, okay, and they were extremely popular and extremely busy at the time. I was teaching sports at an international school on an American curriculum in Bangkok, and so I had 4 months paid vacation every year, which gave me the resources and the time to keep going back down to this particular spa and do these cleansing programs. And I was having very interesting conversations with people about let's just say all things spiritual and metaphysical on top of the physical cleanses that I was doing. And I remember one night I went to this particular man's talk. It was on emotional detoxification. And a guy by the name of Barry Musgrave, he he's one of my mentors in this work now. And mid 70s British man, very very focused, very a special guy. And he started talking about language and words and stories and what happens to our perspective when we keep using the same kinds of thoughts to essentially tell ourselves a story about what happened to us and what we deserve and what we can have or what we can't have. And he made some very clear points, and he asked the crowd, he said, "Is there anyone in the crowd that's upset about something?" This girl just took her arm, went straight up. And he goes, "Yes, what's going on?" And she said, "My boyfriend cheated on me in front of all of our friends in Beach Week and then dumped me a few days later. That was 4 years ago, and I haven't been in a relationship since. I'm pissed. I'm very upset with men." Boom, just laid it right out. And he said, "Okay, tell me the story, exactly what happened in more detail." And she did it 3 times. The first time she went through the story, she got into some of the more sticky spots, and she was angry. She was crying with tears. Tell me the story again and make 2 adjustments to this sentence, and then take that particular word out at the end. She did, and now 2.5 minutes later, she's sad, no tears. play the memory through a third time and take that one sentence in the middle out. She did, and this time she was more or less neutral. No tears, no toxic emotions, and it allowed her to shift her perspective so much. She goes, you know, that guy was weird. It was never going to work out anyway. And the light bulbs went off for me. I said, that's not my story, but that's my story. And so I went and he was using something called emotional freedom technique. You've likely heard of it in your travels and things. It's the tapping.
Yep.
So I went and trained with the founder, Gary Craig. This was in 1996. After I finished up, I was in Bangkok for 5 years. I finished up teaching there. I went, trained with him, and then went back to the spa, that same spa, and started working as a counselor. And I was using emotional freedom technique. So it's very language oriented, very story oriented, and with the tapping involved. And that amount of time was, I spent a lot of time face to face with people, two people in a room, myself being one of them, paying very close attention to what people say and what happens when people say what they say. And I started taking notes. And eventually I got much more interested in the way people breathe or lack thereof in context to the words that they used in the tapping. So about 4 years ago, I just dropped the tapping altogether and focused on the words and work in a couple of breaths in between the statements, in between the sentences. And I found, well, for me personally, that's how I like to work with people. And yeah, I traveled around, flew my own flag for about 7 years, practicing and traveling and presenting and studying. In 2014, we were talking about earlier, I crossed paths with my business partner back in Thailand, who had been a longtime friend from the spa. Great guy, super, super slick, super smart. A real genius with the language work. I showed him what I was doing, and he comes from a more corporate background, a professional leadership and management development, sales training background, very prestigious one. And he looked at the notes that I had taken. It was more than notes. I'd written a couple of ebooks, a handbook, and then a language overhaul program, which was at the time 90 days. So we distill that thing out. We partner up. It took us 45 seconds to shake hands on going into business with each other, which is one of the smartest handshakes I've made to date. And we distill the message and add to it. And interestingly enough, that language overhaul program, that workbook, was the schematics, that was the blueprint for Core Language Upgrade, the course you just took. A lot of information, I know.
No, that's good. Yeah, man, that's super interesting. It's funny because we have some similarities. When you were in Thailand, where did you train?
I trained at the head of the Japanese school for the American School of Bangkok. He lived across the street from the school, and he had a gym in his house. And he brought in an ex-Lumpini champion. So Lumpini Stadium is, you know what Lumpini is for the people that the first time hearing it. It's the most prestigious kickboxing stadium it's the Super Bowl. It's the Super Bowl of Thai boxing in Thailand as far as stadiums are concerned. Like there's two big ones, and that's the one. So he would come in. I would train over at his house, and they had and a couple of gyms down on Koh Samui when I would go train down there. Ingram Gym, we went to that one. Bangkok Fight Club, that started up right when we were there. Jun's Muay Thai on Koh Samui, that's the place I've trained out of the most.
Nice.
Yeah. How about yourself, man?
So I went and I did 6 weeks at Phuket Top Team. So I was
training.
They're great. It was fun because I just got my butt handed to me consistently, I realized that my boxing was pretty good. I had a 2-time Golden Glove boxer in Canada train me, but I was always
Nice.
fighting kids, like training kids. So, and then Jack, the guy who was coaching me, just beat me up. This old man just beat the crap out of me all the time.
Mm,
But it's interesting because we were talking a little bit before on the podcast of just how martial arts can actually, just what we learn from martial arts, carry into all of the areas of our life. You don't lose those skills, and just like with language, you don't lose those skills. And so, I was going to talk a little bit about like my feeling around words. So, the book that I
yes,
wrote,
please.
Zen Athlete, is around basically self mastery through sport. Using martial arts is simply a catalyst for self mastery. So, if you're going to be a serious martial artist, you need to take care of your body. You're going to learn about your body. You're going to be in physical shape. You're going to learn about, then the next step is your mind. And a part of the mind is the words. So, when I'm training an athlete, and I have actually 2 now going to the Olympics, what we say to ourselves is massive. So, and it's very
Massive.
immediate in martial arts and extreme sports, So if I'm, helping someone, they want to do a double backflip, or one of my athletes did a front flip heel clicker on a motorcycle. If they mess that up, they have serious consequences instantly. So there's no way that they can
Instantly.
say, yeah, right. There's no way they could say, I'm not going to land this, or I'm not sure. That language or self-talk is paramount. You can't say, well, maybe I'm going to land this backflip over this 80-foot jump. It's I'm going to land this backflip, and don't move forward until you're at least in the 90th percentile of very confident, if not 100, right? So
Mm,
uh, what we tell ourselves is so immediate, but we almost, I don't know if we're taught it culturally or what the deal is with it, but we have this essentially broken language system that has us create realities we don't even mean to. So one of my mentors wrote the book The Law of Attraction, and it's very
nice.
NLP based, which is neuro linguistic programming. So neuro is how you think, linguistic is what you say and how you talk about it, and programming are your habits. And
Mm,
so he's like, the number one reason why people are attracting into their lives what they don't want is because they are talking about what they don't want. So if you say, I don't want to fall on my head in this backflip, or I don't want to be late, or don't imagine a pink elephant, you're going to imagine the pink elephant to make sense. And so in his process for attraction, it starts with thoughts. And then these thoughts, you're going to bring them down into words, made up of thoughts. And then
mm,
you're going to send out a signal and a vibration out that you're going to get more of. So the key thing to start attracting the things that you want into your life is how you think, and then the words you project out. So, in my work and all the study that I've done on personal development, words are paramount, and how you've distilled it, I feel, is very, very brilliant. So I don't know if there's any way you want to how to touch on maybe some of the course, but you go the difference between conflict language, architect language. It's so simple, but it's so powerful. Just in the same way, I'm teaching a kid to do his first backflip, and he says to himself, I don't think I'm going to land this, and then he goes to try, or I am going to land this. It's a massive shift. And so when we take that
good deal.
immediacy into our daily lives with how we talk about our work, how we talk about our relationships, how we talk about or treat friends, family, coworkers, or whatever, it's a massive difference. It's just you don't have that physical pain that you get in extreme sports, but it's the same level of um, change that will happen to your life if you learn these simple but very profound changes. So I'll just give you that. You can go wherever you'd
Okay.
like.
Okay. Wonderful. Yes. Yes. What we focus on, well, in certain circles, people say what we focus on expands, and it's an accurate way to talk about our ability to create. Is it okay if we talk about abracadabra now? Bring that in the conversation.
Yeah, heck yeah, man. Bring in whatever
Okay.
you'd like.
Okay. Cool. So I remember very clearly the the exact moment. It was a dinner down in Ecuador. Um, I was with friends. It was about 6 of us, and the guy at the end of the table, he said, "Hey, Mark, do you know what abracadabra means?" And I'm eating my dinner. I said, "Yeah, magic." Paid about 5% of attention to it. And he goes, "No, no, no." He said, "Abracadabra is Aramaic, and it translates to with my word I create, or with my word I influence." And I literally, the fork came away from my face, put it down, and I looked at him, and it put something very important in place for me, is that language does exactly that. It influences, it creates. So as far as creating the mental imagery of what we don't want, that's exactly your mentor. You're exactly right. If I focus and stare at worst case scenarios due to the way I'm structuring my thoughts and the conversations that I have, then that adds up. I only have so much time in the day. And to date, the one of the most powerful examples of our language influencing us with negations comes from an experience I had coaching a young man in Calgary a number of years ago. I was brought in to help develop the company culture, and I did some one-on-one training while I was there, one-on-one coaching. And it was myself and this young man. He was about 23, 24, and we're in the same room together, and just two chairs, us talking. And this is what he said, Matt, and this is what he did. I'll focus right at you. He goes, "I can't keep focusing on my past." A lot faster than that, though. I had to keep my headgear on, my headphones. It was just like that. And of course I saw it. I'm looking right at him, and I go, you just turned around and looked behind you, right? He goes, "Really?" And I said, "Yes, you did." And I asked him, because of Abracadabra, with our words we influence. With our words, what do we influence? Four of the big ones, as far as Pro Cabulary is concerned. With our words, we influence what we envision. We influence how we feel, the energy we create. We influence where we breathe, how we breathe, for better or for worse, and we influence our physicality, our physical body. So for him, I asked him, I said, "Did you make a picture, a little movie or something like that?" And he had to slow things down and, excuse me, and think about that question. He thought, and he said, "Yeah, I did." I said, "Well, what did you see?" He said, "I saw myself in chains." And I said, "How are you feeling?" And he said, "Well, I'm upset, and I'm really anxious. I mean, I want to do well in this job." And the guy was breathing in basically the last 5% of his the top part of his chest. And obviously it worked into his physical body too. He turned around and didn't even know he turned around. And I brought this up in the presentation this morning, that this is, and yes, this is partly my education background coming into play. I see this whole conversation, Matt, as a educational issue. Definitely not an intelligence issue. Most people's education about their language comes down to three static things: grammar, spelling, and definitions, none of which address how our words influence our imaginations, how we feel, how we breathe, and how we move, and then also the people that we speak to, the people that we write emails to. And obviously it's a very intimate thing, speaking with someone. It fascinates me when I take the time, or invest the time, choose your words, to really contemplate that. I'm going to move my mouth and tongue in certain ways and push air through my throat, and it's going to, in a very short amount of time, go over there, and it's going to literally penetrate a person's physicality, and they're going to interpret that, and it's going to kick off a series of events. They're going to make a series of pictures and mental movies, and they're going to create a certain kind of energy. And if I say, I don't want to keep arguing with you because I don't like fighting, versus I love it when we sit down and converse so we can have better outcomes. I'm talking about the same thing in one sense, and yet I choose different words and have a very different experience for myself and the person I'm talking to. So as far as negations are concerned, huge, big deal. It's one of the three pillars. It's one of the three in the Pro Cabulary system. It's one of the three pillars of conflict language. And it's either one of those pillars or a combination of all three have been at the core of every one of our clients and students' problems, and the remediation of that, or the translation of that. That's what we call them. So going from a negation to an affirmation. I can't keep focusing on my past versus I can focus more on my future. That translation, it's a very big deal, and it definitely adds up.
Yeah, 100%. With going back to where I came into this, and I liked how you did it as well. It was a little bit of an upgrade of my experience from the law of attraction. But so the law of attraction states, I attract to my life whatever I give my attention, energy, and focus to, whether negative or positive. So if I keep saying, don't be late, I don't want to fall on my head on the backflip, I don't want to have a boyfriend or girlfriend who's an ass or whatever, we're giving attention, energy, and focus to what we don't want. And the switch for us, when I was teaching law of attraction and how Michael Lozia does it, is you simply stop through awareness and then you ask, so what do I want? So if I don't want to land on my head on the backflip, so what do I want? I want to land the backflip. If I don't want to have a crappy relationship, I want to have a loving, fulfilling relationship. If I don't want to be late, I want to be on time. And that switch from what you don't want to what you do want changes the words, changes the energy, changes the vibration, changes the outcome. So simple, but literally a game changer. You'll find that people who are mostly sick or mostly, have a problem will talk about it repeatedly. And they'll keep taking that past and putting it out into the future, take it in the past and put it in the future. So I really like the way that you've done it as well, because I can notice within the first couple, I was like, this is very detailed, very clear going into each of the situations, super powerful and practical information, that even like I had nice upgrades. I was like, oh, cool. So, I'm seeing how I'm doing in my head, and now just little switches that are now really upgrading my language, how I'm talking to myself internally, because that's another huge aspect, is how we're talking to ourselves. So do you want to touch on some of the pillars and some of the course outline? Because I think it's really good, from conflict language to architect language. You have
The audio.
There
Can
we
you hear
go.
me?
So
There we go.
yeah, I was pushing the
Good.
button. Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, man. Yeah. So you're talking about, I don't know if you heard this, but negations versus affirmations, soft talk versus solid talk, projections versus reflections. These are the core pillars, core pieces. And
Yes.
if we can understand those, go from what we don't want to what we do want, we literally will shift our reality. That's the start, because as you said, with your words, you create, and this is the building blocks of it. And it also, we'll get into this a little bit later, but I want to get your thoughts on it. Is just the power of our thought. When we start to bring in awareness with the words we're going to shoot out, we're going to pick from these thoughts, choose words to create a reality. So then through this awareness process, we're going to start to change the thoughts that come in, because we're choosing different words from infinite possibilities.
Yes.
And then it gets into different stuff where, I guess I'll go into it now, but in Buddhism, they'll talk about mental nutriments. And so if you wake up every day and then you look at war on TV and you're, I don't know, just Fox News, and then you're filling yourself up with some other nonsense, all your wall is like crazy death, war, or
Chaos.
whatever, then chaos everywhere. You can't, your mind has to perceive it and filter the information. If it's all peace and harmony, or that's why in Zen, Thich Nhat Hanh, he's awesome, and he'll just talk about the mental nutriments. So whatever we're filling our mind up with, that's how we're going to begin to create a reality. So a little bit of a rant there, but I wanted you to touch on,
Love them.
on how you've distilled the process going into your pillars, because it's really awesome stuff.
Oh, thanks, Matt. And that means a lot coming from you. I know you've been in this game for a long time. So the 3 pillars, and how did we get to the 3 pillars? Out of 4,000 plus coaching sessions, myself, and our client, one of our clients, conversing, paying very close attention to what they say and the cause and effect reaction from what they say, we distilled out 3 main pillars. Negations. So talking about what we don't want, can't have, shouldn't have happened, isn't possible. Soft talk. Well, I guess I'm sort of one day would like to go train in Thailand, perhaps. Softening words. It creates tremendous amounts of indecision in people. And it also puts out, just out of reach for someone, what they would almost always greatly benefit from acknowledging. I think I have a drinking problem. Take out the think. You'll know if it's true or not, and then take action accordingly. I could probably spend more time with the kids. Take out the probably. I could spend more time with the kids. It's either true or false. Instead of me contemplating it being a possibility, I check in with myself with that statement and can make a choice now. Then we have projections, which 90% of the time are the most psychologically and emotionally inflammatory. And basically, projections, they externalize blame and control. And this is what they sound like. She never lets me think for myself. He makes me feel insecure. My mother won't let me live my own life. They need to treat me with more respect. So what it does, back to Abracadabra, what it does as far as people's imagination is concerned is it creates victim-perpetrator mental imagery. I'm in the picture. Somebody else is in the picture. They're doing something to me. It sends me into a stress response, and I have to wait until they change their behavior so I can feel better. It's a terrible, terrible approach to developing ourselves in a conscious and empowering way. And if we focus in on the breath, we talk about this. We almost always talk about this in presentations and definitely during coaching, is that conflict language, which was called victim mentality language initially. And there's a reason for that. I can bring that up later. Conflict language activates and maintains sympathetic nervous system response, or a stress response in someone's body. And what happens when that happens, and I know you know all this, I know you know all this, and we'll share it again for your audience. Our breathing gets trapped in our upper chest, which is known as shallow breathing or labored breathing or coastal breathing. And we have language. We have language that describes this phenomenon. I have to get this off my chest. So what's the this? I have to get this off my chest. Pressure, tension, tightness. Okay. I want to take a sigh of relief of pressure. And where do we do it? Do we take a nice sigh of relief down into our abdomen? Or is it more of a just a little sliver off the top? Let's clear the air, Matt. What air? The air in the closet? The air in the tires of my car that got stolen this morning? No, the air in my lungs, because I'm holding my breath because I'm in a stress response about a story. And we need to talk about it so I can start to breathe deeply and remediate some of these warning signals that my body's giving me. Hey man, something's going on. Do something about it. Our breathing is stuck, it's stagnant. And let's just talk about Mark. If I use projections and negations in soft talk, I send myself into a stress response. I get it. When I translate out some of those conflict language statements, so I can't keep focusing on my past, right? I don't want to argue with you so much. Okay, cool. What do I want to do? I want I want us to go out to dinner and have a very focused conversation about where we can take our relationship. Okay. Well, maybe I should start working out more. I should start working out more. And let's take out the should. I could work out more. Okay, well, guess what? I can work out more. Now, what kind of workouts do I want to do more of? This, and this. And you need to treat me with more respect. Well, let's do this first. I need to treat me with more respect. Okay? When I translate out that conflict language and conflict stories into architect language and architect stories, I place so much more of my focus and attention on me, and I literally I talk about this sometimes depending on the audience, and your audience is definitely this kind of audience, is that there is a centering and a grounding aspect to Pro Cabulary. So conflict language, it gets people all top heavy energetically. Okay. And you've seen this when people drive in their car and they're all stressed about something. Are they leaned back like this? Or are they leaned over the steering wheel and the music's off because they can't even hear themselves think? They're top heavy energetically. Okay. They're ungrounded. And a vast majority of that's coming from their words. The more architect language I use, and generally speaking, other people, when they use architect language, it puts them back in their center, and it drops their breathing down into their abdomen, into that parasympathetic nervous system response. They breathe more deeply. They're more in their body. They become better at listening and observing their surroundings, and less reactive, less of a victim.
Yeah, man, that's extremely powerful stuff. I was just about to take a few notes there. But one of the things that I will talk about consistently is just from interviewing almost 100 leaders in different spaces in personal development, spirituality. The two fundamentals that I see for enlightenment or empowered living is, number one, you take full responsibility for every single thing that ever happened to you. And so in Pro Cabulary, it always puts the onus back on you, because if it is something outside of you that is controlling you, then you are now a victim and you have no power. But where you do get the power, even if it's a crappy situation like your car is stolen, that's outside your control. You can sit and you can kick your toes and you can not smile for a year or 10 years. That's your choice. You get that choice. But if you want to become empowered, you have to take your own responsibility for what you're creating. And the second thing is just adding to, basically being of service. Don't, when you're selfish and you're just trying to get for yourself, you can only get so far, in life and how you feel. It's going to be some sort of service that's going to bring real fulfillment. What are you excited to share with people or produce and give? But I want to kind of go back into, it's interesting, the parasympathetic nervous system. Is that what it is?
Yes.
So the stress response is basically fear response. So when we are in fear, we're not activating other parts of our brain, other parts of our body. We're definitely not relaxed. We are not functioning at our peak potential. If I have a client or an athlete that is about to do a run for the Olympics and they are super afraid, they are going to perform terribly. If you're going to go into a cage and fight, if you're super afraid, you're going to perform terribly. You're wasting and blasting energy out. So every day when you wake up,
Indeed.
And people almost wake up naturally in stress, they rush, they got to get to work, they got to get this thing on time. So you're waking up, you hurry, you get to work, you hurry, you get home, you hurry, and then you watch some TV and you fall asleep. You're basically in a fear stress response. And so the breathing is the body. That's why it's super interesting to pay attention to people's body. Tony Robbins will talk about it all the time. If you want to break someone's state, get them sitting up straight. You can control the body, control the breathing. Now we've taken control of what we can. And so these are really important, deep, scientific things that happen in the body when you're functioning as you should, your natural state of being is peace. And it is the stories in our head, and it is our thinking. It is the monkey mind that we're not paying attention to that can create a great deal of stress. And that's, meditation is one of those tools that help, because really, if you're not meditating, don't overcomplicate it. Just observe your thoughts like a movie. So if I continue to think, this stress, this stress, this stress, you're just observing what thoughts you continuously have and let them go. But with that awareness now, you can choose which ones you're going to attach onto and go for a ride. And you're going to notice when your mind is going AWOL and you're just stressing yourself out through simple thinking, and breath is the thing that just has you come back right away. And one of the things I wanted to touch on, you worded it differently in your course, which I really liked. I've heard of neural pruning. So let's say you have the thing that you don't want. So you hate your job, you hate your relationship, the world's, everything is outside my control and everything sucks. You start to empower yourself and you say, I can start to earn more money. I can have a loving relationship. I can build a business that I enjoy. I can go traveling. And you start to build this new language, while this old neural net, this neuro stress response that you have, will slowly begin to fade away, and then which is neural pruning, and then you're going to build a new neural net of empowered thinking, empowered action, and then you will get the result. But you word it it's a little bit different the way you word it. You want to talk about that a little bit? You know what I'm talking about?
Yes, please. Yes, I do. If I'm recalling the course correctly, those neural nets, so neural pruning, synaptic pruning, they fade away, they wither. And as the old saying goes, use it or lose it. When we build new neural nets, and this is a question I'm going to ask myself out loud. I will research it later. So when we develop a skill set, whether it be complaining or doing backflips, okay? The more that we complain, let's put it on me. If I start complaining a lot today, right now, and I keep complaining a lot tomorrow, and I keep complaining a lot next month, and I blame and I complain and I make a real habit about this for, say, the next solid year, I will create or reinstate a specific neural net, and then I wrap it with this stuff called myelin. The more myelin that I have, it's insulation. The more insulation I have around a neural net, the more automatic it's going to become. Same thing with a backflip. So you teach one of your athletes to do a backflip, and they train it and train it and train it and train it, and you detail it. They train it again, and then they train it again, and over and over and over again. It's eventually they're just automatic with it. What's interesting is if the myelin stays the same. What I'm assuming is that the myelin will either deteriorate or get removed or dissolved, because that would make sense. If synaptic pruning happens, which that definitely does, then that would, because we talk about that a lot in the course, myelination. Myelination, remember? It's a joke Adam and I have. That was a bit of a tangent. Does that answer your question?
It was, yeah, that's what you touched on. It was called myelination. I'd never heard of that. I'd heard of the neural pruning, but the myelination was a nice upgrade into just another process that happens in the brain. And the nice thing is that, you don't need to know what happens in the brain or all of this stuff. It's nice to know if you're a curious person, to check it out. But to solve it, to change your life, to have an effect, is actually, the process is quite simple. And so the way that you educate, I think is really fantastic. It's just very clear and concise, to the point, and tangible. So for me, whenever I want to learn something, whether it's martial arts or personal development or whatever the case is, I want a result. So one of the best people I like is Pavel Tsatsouline, who's this Russian strength coach. And so I'm a skateboarder and a snowboarder, and I don't want to go do squats if I can't go snowboard and skate the next day. So this guy had the simplest workout ever. It was the complete opposite of everybody. It's basically minimalist. So I did 3 sets of 3 deadlifts, and I've never done a deadlift in my life. I train martial arts, so it was all like bag and push-ups, sit-ups, things like that. So 3 sets of 3 deadlift every second day, with some bench press as well, and that's it. And so in 3.5 months, I went from deadlifting 225 to 415. And so I'm getting this insane result. Now, I don't need to know what happens to the back or what's going on within the muscles or whatever. That's nice to know, and it's a bonus if I knew, but I just needed to follow a simple process to
Mm.
get the result that I wanted. And so when I'm learning and I'm wanting to change a life result, I want to have practical tools that I can measure and have the experience, and then the information around it is a bonus. So I was just wondering if you could touch a little bit on the difference between soft talk versus solid talk, or what you did, projections versus reflections. So you did that a little bit, but um, if someone is listening to this and they want to get like a mini applicable, here are some tools and elements, here are some things you can do right now, and then we'll go a little bit deeper into some of the other questions I have. But I wanted to have them like a
Okay,
practical takeaway, because even
cool.
what we've discussed now, if applied today, will change your results now. And I know you can do that in a 5 minutes or less because you're a great educator.
Well, thank you, man. I mean that. We will, for the conflict language, we'll externalize my recommendations, and then we'll talk about the benefits of speaking just a little bit slower. So if someone wants to learn more about projection, so it's they did this and she did that and he thinks I'm this and because that thing right there, go find somebody who blames the whole world. Think of the person that you know that has the biggest blame story, and go hang out with them and listen. Focus in more instead of believing their story to be true. Zero in on their language. Okay, that's for projections. For soft talk, go find the most indecisive person that you know. Well, I think I guess we should maybe, perhaps one day we could do these things. I think, it's almost like I'm procrastinating, I guess. Go find someone, the biggest procrastinator, the person with the most indecision, and zero in on their language. Okay. And then go find the person that thinks the world is coming to an end. Okay. And has the most problems as far as nervousness, and listen to what they're going to use. A lot of negations. They're going to be painting that worst case scenario. That is, for a variety of reasons, a wonderful place to start, because it's basically like we're going to the movies. You get to watch these people act out these these uh, these scripts, and it makes it very real, very quickly. And for me, when I'm having a a crucial conversation, or I want to emphasize some things, also when I'm coaching someone and they are, let's say they're a chronic soft talker, what I recommend, and this is also how we do story remediation work, which we can talk about that as well. I can go into that in a matter of about 5 minutes, and give your audience another legit takeaway, is to slow down the rate at which we speak. It's very it's far easier for me, and then both personally and professionally, I've noticed this across the board. It's so much easier for me to observe my thought processes, for better or for worse, when I speak just a little bit slower. And not only when I speak a little bit slower, I'm not talking so fast, and when I'm not talking so fast, I can get more in my body. And if I'm talking really quickly, then it goes all up here, and the exact opposite of that. Speaking just a little bit more slowly, I say less and I get more done. And it's easier for me to keep my breathing cyclical, diaphragmatic breathing. I'm relaxed, and my words, they care. It's interesting. It's like a Taoist um, axiom. My words carry more weight the less resistant I am when I speak them.
That's super interesting, man. Well, I definitely noticed in going through the course, everything was very specific, and it was all meaningful. And doing a little bit of, I had this random job when I was in Australia, and I was a telemarketer of sorts for like printing. And this
Interesting.
guy, though, I can't remember his background, but he was a master of language, and every sentence was crafted, and there was a cadence and a drop. And
Mm,
I spent a month getting this master course on language. So it's just an interesting reminder. And in saying that, I realized that I speak really quickly, and it's because I'm getting a lot of ideas and thoughts, and I'm trying to blast them all out.
mm,
And if I could take a step back to just feel into it, it is going to carry more weight. They're going to be more specific, more meaningful. And maybe as I'm just talking this out here, it's you have this infinite option, as always, to what to say,
mm-hmm.
what to choose from. So you're just giving yourself a little bit more time to filter through the options, to come back and choose what you want to do for the outcome. So in hypnosis, if you're going to do, so I know how to do hypnosis, which is really easy. It's in the Zen Athlete program if you guys want to check it out. Because man, the people that I've had, I gave it to people for a test that were in business and other stuff. I was like, yo, just use this and apply it to whatever you're doing, because hypnosis is another one of those things that's so simple. It's not that hard. You just have to relax your mind, and then project what you want and visualize it and get into the feeling. So it's just really important. Like, you need to know the outcome that you want. So,
Yes.
you can learn, like I have like 3 audios, and I'll just say it right now. This is how you
Do
do
it.
self-hypnosis. Relax yourself. So give maybe a 10-to-1, or focus on your breathing or whatever. Take in 10 deep breaths, take in 20, just get into a relaxed state of mind. Because when you're in your conscious mind as Matt, they call it the critical factor. You can't say, Matt, Zen Athlete's a best-selling book, or Matt, your podcast is amazing and it's worldwide, or whatever I'm trying to create. I'm like, no, actually, this guy's got the bag podcast, or that's the best snowboarder, or whatever. You're fighting it with your consciousness. But when you're relaxed, you're just going to allow the suggestions to come in, and then experience the thing that you want. So
Mm,
experience having a great time at work. Experience the job that you want to create. Experience the result that you want to have. So the outcome, knowing the outcome, is essentially the key. So when you're communicating, what is that outcome? Why are you communicating? Do you want to serve this person and help them in some sort of way? Do you just want to have a meaningful conversation? But in slowing down the words, you're going to be able to dictate that outcome, so it's more enjoyable. It's more, I don't know the word, just meaningful. But it's simple again, and really, really powerful. So where I wanted to go with this, I had this question written down from, because I finished the course today with my girlfriend. I had to go through 3, but they're 5 very powerful lessons. It starts talking about soft talk in your head. My girlfriend looks, and I turn it, and it's like she's a deer in headlights, and everything that you're saying, she's like, oh my God, I'm a soft talker. And and she's holding my finger like we're watching a horror movie, because she's watching it come in, is like, this is what happens, this is how you feel this. And she's like, oh my God. And it was so funny. So we did the 3, and I was like, look, you can
I'm a
go through it.
soft.
She's like, I'm gonna go through it now. And it was such a funny experience, because then I'd be like, okay, and she's a kindergarten teacher too, right? So she's an educator. And so you have your quiz at the bottom, right? And then I was like, okay, what's the answer? And she's like, and she would say it, but she would say it with this feeling of like, oh, that's what happens. Yes, that's right. Oh no. But this awareness now empowers you to make a simple change. But we're not taught this in school. We're not taught so many things in school
Yes, it's
about
true.
how our thoughts create our reality, how we're not taught any basic real quality law of attraction, real quality meditation, real quality neurolinguistic programming, which this would be a master class, and something, from what I see out there, mandatory. It was an
Mm,
upgrade. It was an upgrade for my language, for my consciousness, that I recommend for sure to everyone. So one of the
super cool.
things that I got into, that I loved, you talked about Keith Chen, and he said people who speak cultural languages with futureless tenses are 30% more likely to save money in a year. So what I wanted to talk about was money, or was it, well, you used the idea of money for the example, but it was words and time, putting it in the future. So how words and the connection with time can change the result we get and how we think about a reality. And so it was kind of like a deep concept that I couldn't really wrap like a very specific question around, but I wonder if you could talk about that example, and then maybe we can go just into how we're using our words to go future, our past, again, disempowering ourselves without even recognizing it.
Gotcha. Um, tense is very, very powerful. And what I've found is many people are, with their language, they're keeping the realities they want to create at fingers distance. They're pushing away where they've been. It hurts. And they're keeping where they want to go just out of reach. Some part of them is bought into the "I'm not good enough" conversation. Technically it's called a telephobia. This is what we gave our TED talk on a couple in June, which is on a side note, it's the fluid nature of identity versus the static definition of identity, and how much control we have in the identity that we create, especially when we learn to leverage our language. So when you or I or Keith Chen, when we bring what we want to be doing into the future, into our present with our language, with present tense language, yes, it might not be happening right here, right now. And kids play, what do kids do when they're kids? They play what? Make believe. We've, for whatever reason, been culturally conditioned to make believe that it's like there's been an unconscious cultural agreement that the only things that we're going to make believe, and this is, let's just say this is 80-20, this is for 80% of the population 80% of the time, that it's okay to worry about things, and it's okay to fret and create worst case scenarios, but it's not okay to envision the things that we want to create in the future, in the present, and speak about them in the present, and breathe and really embody what that would feel like. So back to your hypnosis training for your athletes, create the experience of that. So a futureless tense, if the language does not have a future tense, it has a now tense. Create what you want to create in the future now in your body with your words. One of the best ways to do it. Yes, this is a pen. It's also a magic wand. Write it down, ladies and gentlemen. Write down what you want, even if it's in half of a sentence on a cocktail napkin. It brings it from the inner world to the outer world. It makes it physical. It's now in physical reality. Excuse me. The difference between a dream and a goal is that a dream is in someone's head and a goal is written down. Write that thing down and play with the tense. Bring it to you. Feel it. Breathe with it. That's my
Yeah, man,
advice.
that's
What I have to
epic.
say about that.
I was writing down the notes, man. I was like, yes, this
Ooh.
is excellent stuff, dude. Actually, I'm writing it as you're saying it, so that's epic. I kind of went and as I was listening, there's something I want to touch on, but then I had a different thought. Okay, so I'm gonna go with this one, and then I'll come back. Just ranting to myself because you brought
Yeah,
up a
let's do it.
lot there. Do you want to talk about just a little bit? And I speak about this pretty consistently. Just the massive importance of how we speak to ourselves in our head. You could touch on a little bit of how
Okay.
your projections and things like that, but just the paramount importance of what the natural setting is, how we speak to ourselves in our head, and how we can literally change our lives when we start to take control of that, because we have free will. So I touched on it a little bit earlier, but the way that I kind of see it is many people will wake up and they basically got to go find money, and they're stressed out because they need to go find this money, because if they don't get the money, then they're not going to be able to eat. If they don't eat, then they're not going to be able to survive. And so they're stressed out. And so they're living in a stress response 24 hours a day, essentially. But this stress can be immediately eradicated through awareness. It's going to take some time if you're in that pattern, but coming back to your breathing, coming back to your center, because,
Yes.
that stress isn't here, or you're anxious because of this future event, or you're afraid because of a past event, and you're reliving it, but this is because of the thoughts you're having and the words that you're creating in your mind. So do you just want to run with that with a little bit of your perspective?
Sure, sure. If anyone can change the quality of the conversation that they're having with themselves about themselves in their mind, if I can do it, anybody can do it. Please, Matt, your audience, hear me when I say this. I was having, creating, entertaining, buying into the worst thought process about myself ever when I was in Thailand, that first year I was in Thailand. And the proof was in the pudding. I wasn't laughing. I was not smiling, nothing. I remember clearly. This is when I knew I had a problem, bro. A specific story. My girlfriend, I went over there with my girlfriend, awesome person, stunning, inside and out. We got over there and she wanted to learn salsa dancing. Okay. And I had just had my knee scoped. I could barely walk without a limp. So she would go to this Cuban club called La Rueda on Tuesdays and Thursdays for salsa lessons. And then Fridays, we would go and everybody would dance. And, well, except for Mark. I would sit. The specific memory I'm referring to is I remember very clearly, and I always will. I was sitting at the bar stool. I was probably 7, 8 Heinekens deep, and I'm watching all the guys in the bar. She's out on the dance floor. She's getting spun around. I mean, I'm wrecked, okay? And I'm watching every guy in the bar thinking, how am I going to get her out from under this guy's nose? And that guy was me. And I didn't care. I did not care about this person that meant a tremendous amount to me, person that I loved and who loved me back. And that lack of just any kind of feeling at all scared me. I said, you got to do something, man. You got to do something. And there is very much, in my personal and professional opinion, something called momentum. So when someone is starting on the path, or something happens and it's an intense experience, they're changing the conversation in their mind. People build energy. We're energy generating machines. Okay. And let's say for me, did I wake up one morning? I'm sure there's people like this. I'm not one of them. Wasn't. Did I wake up one morning and all of my negativity and negative thought processes gone, done, the whole thing was over? No. It was a step-by-step remediation of me learning to think differently about myself, developing the proof of it, learning to speak differently, and over time, the neural net, I created a different neural net about my life. Okay. And over time, I created a different energy for myself. And over time, through telling myself a better story about myself, which is something that anyone can learn to do, my breathing descended down into my abdomen, which in Pro Cabulary, we call it the great transition. So if someone is a classic chronic chest breather, there's a reason for that. And our opinion is unless it's environmental or some kind of allergy or something, it's coming from people's thoughts. And the more conflict language I use, or the less conflict language I use, the more architect language I use, slowly and surely my breathing will descend down into my abdomen. And I will feel differently about myself. and I will sound different to myself, and I will sound different to other people. And eventually that change will ripple out into my outer world. So I bring that up. I feel it's important to recognize. So people have patience. Have patience with yourself. I say this to myself frequently. I'm a flawed individual. Okay, there are areas of myself and my character that I will always be polishing, or will be polishing until there's nothing to polish. Okay, and the more patient I am with myself about those things, and the more I relax into them while doing what needs to be done, the faster it seems to go. So, we're all in this together. We're all thinking thoughts. I said that this morning at the presentation. I said, raise your hand if you had at least one thought this morning. Everybody giggled. Raise your hand if you've spoken at least one word today. Everybody giggled. Raise your hand if you did both of those things yesterday. Everybody raised their hand and giggled. Raise your hand if you expect to do those two things tomorrow. Everybody okay, so I was like, okay, cool. We can expect to have an ongoing relationship with words for a long time, as long as we're conscious. And that's exciting, because we're a lot more powerful than we've been led to believe. A whole lot more. In my opinion, and take it with a grain of salt, because this is the business that we're in, is that identity, it's the master conversation. How I see myself, the story I tell myself about myself, it's the master conversation as far as personal and professional development is concerned. And I know you have a lot of high level thinkers on your podcast and things. I can only follow those conversations so far. Some of the more lofty conversations and podcasts that you have, a lot of that stuff is over my head. I'm a simple man, and it's true. And I know that we flirt with greatness, and I don't want to flirt with it. I want to dance with it.
Man, that's beautiful, dude. Really, really wonderful. I think it's so empowering, realizing that it is a process, and realizing, as you're going through your process, we're literally creating our reality. One of the people that I like, and he's very lofty, is Seven Bomar. And, he always has words create worlds. Well, when we empower ourselves, we're creating our own world. You've created your own world. A part of that, and as you going through your process, just moving through it, making a decision, you created a world for yourself that you're now experiencing. And now you're giving that information to others so that they can create their own worlds. And then they can take that information and they can create their own, and pass that information on. And so it's really simple, but really profound. And, to get into the crazy concepts, which my favorite, I heard, back in the day when I get into the really deep spiritual and metaphysical stuff that, maybe, who knows, I don't know, but I've heard this a few times, that back in the day, we could actually create instantly through our word. Word is this sacred thing. And so I'll give you a specific example from J.J. Hurtak. This was Dan Winter. So you can check out Dan Winter. He's a physicist. He was mentored by Buckminster Fuller. He is an outrageously smart individual.
That's awesome.
I've gone through hours of his stuff, and I don't know even when I'm looking at it's physics and it'll come down. But basically, where he's at with his work is that when we die, so there's a lucid dreaming realm. So he's like, get into lucid dreaming. But when we die, we are essentially a ball of plasma. And he's like, when you are this ball of plasma, you have infinite options. And he's like, the word, you're going to just think the word. And I don't know if he says the word or he has it, but as you think this word, it's a vibration. And the vibration is an actual coordinate, and it shoots you somewhere. And this is after like this is like hours of physics. And I'm like, I'm like, I don't know, Dan, I'm going to get him on the podcast and have him explain himself, because I'm like, what is going on, dude? But it's super interesting. But I had heard concepts before, like, basically we could manifest instantly. But now in the dimension we have, I see it as a learning grounds. You have
Mm,
manifested over a period of time. And that's the thing. You're still manifesting with your word, but we're also manifesting and creating our life with the words that are filtering in and that we choose to attach to. And then we verbalize it out. Again, another free will choice because it's all infinite options. And the more you quiet your mind through meditation or whatever your practice or presence or breathing, then you can really get specific with the words you want to latch onto, to the stories that you're creating,
mm-hmm.
and understanding that the individual story that you're creating is going to shape your reality. That's ultimately it. Just full 100% responsibility for what story am I telling myself. And I was writing that down. I think that's so beautiful and so powerful. Just architecting and creating the story we say to ourselves. So I'll just give you this one because um, it's something that I work on. Greg Braden, in one of his talks, said we have 3 universal fears: not being loved, not being accepted, and not being good enough or worthy. When I'm
Mm.
coaching a high level athlete or even a business person that sabotages, uh, I intuitively know it's probably going to come back to self-worth. They can come number 2 in the competition, but not number 1 because they're not good enough to be that person representing the best, being number 1, because they don't feel like they're number 1. So they're going to sabotage that little bit. And it's this deep, you know, root like negativity that we're not even aware of. So from your experience in architecting our own language, do you have a process? So for me, mine's self-worth. It was always like, when I read another book, then I'll know. When I do this course, then I'll know. When I trek Mount Everest, then I'll be good enough. When I train with monks, then I'll be good enough. And I still have it. And it's a lot less, and I've worked on it a lot, but that crafting that conversation with myself will never change. It's going to be a daily dialogue with me and myself, and we all have that. So extremely fundamental, powerful stuff. And like you said, I believe it too. When we master that conversation with ourselves, with the words
Mm.
that we create, and that's your connection to spirit too, source.
Mm.
Where are these thoughts coming from? It's you and everything else. So all of us are on the edge of greatness within ourselves, with
Mm.
creating that beautiful life experience we all deserve, whatever that is. And it's all individual. There's more than enough for everyone. So I think this is one of the fundamental tools. It just has to be. But what would you say, from what you've experienced, to just use architect language within ourselves and having this identity, maybe like just a thought on that, or a tip for creating self-love or self-worth within our mind, using some of the tools that you work with people with?
Okay. Yes. I have a specific tip for that. The definition of a spell, Matt, is a word or a combination of words of great influence. And so that's Webster's definition. No hocus pocus, magic, nothing. So uh, back to the I'm not good enough spell, to just like a bad habit. We break a bad habit. So same thing with a spell. We break spells, or we dispel. Dispel, the definition of dispel is to cast out negativity. And arguably my favorite spell to break or to dispel is the I'm not good enough spell. So what people need to do, that is a general, all-encompassing statement. It will wash everything in a person's imagination with the paint of that statement. Write it down and then fill out the rest. Okay, so I'm not good enough for. Now we have to think. What exactly am I not good enough for? I'm not good enough to run this race. Are you running it? Well, yeah. So you are good enough to run it. Yes. Could you win it? I guess. Yes or no? I could. I'm good enough to run the race, period, and I could win, period, is superior to I'm not good enough. I'll be good enough when I go train with monks. Let's put a 4 in there. I'll be good enough for what once I go train with monks? I'll be good enough to teach high school kids a spinning back fist once I go train with monks. Boom. The sentences, those statements, building them out, adding a little bit more content. So it's, as far as stories are concerned, most of the time they either need to be expanded upon and scrutinized and developed, or collapsed. Words taken out, simplified, in order to get the result that we want from ourselves, in order to develop that conversation. And the good enough conversation, guess what? I'm good enough. Marking on is good enough for what? Am I good enough to give a TED talk? Yes, I am. And I knew that. Hence I did. And guess what? I also knew that in order to get on stage and put myself in a position to deliver the message the way we wanted to deliver it, I had to work my ass off. We put 3 months of intense work into that presentation. And TEDx RVA is Richmond, Virginia. TEDx RVA is one of the top 10 TEDx's in the world out of 5,000 for a reason. They are ninjas from the intake call to the after party. Okay? Love those people. And the first month, Adam and I spent 1 month of, he lives in Thailand. A lot of our calls, it took 1 month to distill the message down into a 9-minute presentation. And then the following 2 months was me relentlessly rehearsing it. And that entailed showing up for physical rehearsals here in Richmond, Skyping in when I was in Europe. I had a TEDx coach. I rehearsed between 75 and 80 times on my own. I presented to chairs. I presented to dogs. Seriously, I just practiced it in order, because I knew I wanted. Okay, so just because I'm good enough to do something doesn't mean I'm going to be able to get out there and do it well. Yeah, I've got the conversation sorted, and now I've got to put in the work. I got to put in the reps. And so I know I'm diverging a little bit, and it's on topic. One of my goals with our presentation was to be free in myself when I walked on stage. And I knew that I could create that potential. I could take that probability and turn it into a potential by doing the reps. And we did a good job.
Awesome. And can you see that? Is that up for people to see on TED? Can you see
it will be, they're in the final stages of the editing process. It will be out in about 10 days, and I will very happily send you a link to that.
Heck yeah, man. Good job. Yeah, that's a big
Thanks,
shit, man.
Thank you. It was super cool, man. It was it was in the most prestigious place to present in Richmond, the Carpenter Center, in front of 1,800 people. And a big deal for me. I'm from Richmond, born and raised, and about halfway through the presentation, I looked down, and there's my whole crew in the front row. Dudes I've ridden bicycles with for, I've known them for 30 years. Right there. And that conversation, I created that experience for myself over the past decade plus a couple of years, simply because I changed the conversation I was having in my mind. Anybody can do it. If I can do it, anybody can do it, period. And the Pro Cabulary training will take that 10 plus years and shrink it down, man.
Yeah, man.
That's why we do it.
100%. That's wonderful. What I just wanted to add on, what that was making me think about, we have 70 to 90,000 thoughts in a day. When we're going through this conversation that we have with ourselves, writing it down on paper and then analyzing it, you're showing how you're thinking. You're basically bringing the operating system or the coding of your mind, and you're putting it out, and then you're looking at it through your own scrutiny, and then you're changing it how you would like. It's like we have this coding and we're software, but we're not aware of what we're coded. And what creates a reality is our thoughts and our words, our thinking. So, one of the Dr. Joe Dispenza, who wrote "You Are the Placebo: Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself." I went to his progressive and advanced workshops, and he has people curing themselves of terminal illnesses, cancer, all different types of things, many
Excuse me.
cases through meditation.
Mm,
And so one of the things he'll say is that your thoughts are the electrical charge to the quantum field, and your emotions are the magnetic. So when you have a thought, one of them I say is just imagine, I don't like doing that. I got to figure out a better way. Just imagine like winning the lottery or something, how you would feel, or imagine that all of a sudden you had wings like an eagle and you could just fly around the world, or just imagine getting punched in the face really hard, or imagine,
crack.
right? Yeah. So, or getting pinned down and something bad. So and I don't like to draw out the bad ones, but you can feel the bad ones a lot worse. I have a few examples. You can feel them. And then so that emotion you're having is emitting a signal. It's emitting a frequency. And Tesla said we're beings of frequency. If you
Mm,
want to understand the nature of reality, think in terms of frequency and vibration. So we have
mm,
a thought that it creates a magnetic charge. You think about, my mother loved me and she was amazing. But if your mother abused you and left you, you're going to have a different feeling, right? So when
mm,
we take control of our thoughts and our words, we're changing our emotional charge, our frequency, and then the field is going to bring that back. So when you're taking out and analyzing what you're thinking, you're literally changing the coding of your body's vibrational makeup. And just that's how
mm.
I'm seeing it anyway. And it's just super powerful, powerful stuff that's within our control, but we're not trained to look at it or know how to switch our own coding. And we switch our own coding through the words that we are using, and then that'll change the thoughts that we think. And then that will change the emotion or energy we put out to the universe, to our lives, and then the field has to, as per law of attraction and every other natural law, respond to that frequency in your result. And I know many other people are results, and some of the people that I coach, there's a very dramatic shift in 1 to 2 months. And a lot of the time,
Mm,
I'll get people, there's some sort of like energy thing. You have to be ready to change, right? I only want to work with people who are like really ready, because it's going to
mm.
change and things drop off
You're
and new
going to
things happen.
change, ladies
Yeah,
and gentlemen.
yeah, like it's gonna happen, right? Unless you're like, okay, cool, I'm not gonna do the steps. It's like, if you're gonna do, it's the same thing as like physical training. If you have a trainer, you go to the gym every single day, you put in the work. So we know, and this to be true, you change the words and the conversation you have with yourself around anything, right? So if I want to have a successful business and I start talking to you, and you're gonna recognize conflict language, negations, and things like that, you can course correct me. New words, new emotion, new frequency, different result. And that's how we
Indeed.
change it. We're changing the coding. So really spectacular stuff, man. Really insightful. I love Pro Cabulary. I think it was so succinct and so
Thank you, man.
smart and so well done. And I don't say things I don't believe in, man. Really amazing stuff. And so I recommend everybody check that out. And what I wanted to ask you, is there anything that you wish that I had asked you on the podcast that you wanted to talk about, or just something you want to leave the listeners with before we close the call?
This interview has been a pleasure, Matt.
Thank you, man.
We touched on, it's just a very well-rounded, great interview. Uh, so big check on that. If any of your listeners want to take Core Language Upgrade, the course that you took, we've got a coupon code for you. Next Level, all one word. So go to procabulary.org courses, and you click purchase, and there'll be a coupon code box that presents itself, and that's a $100 coupon code. So we want to make this, and are making this accessible to people. It's a game changer. And as far as the conversation about words and stories and the identities we create, whether someone goes down the Procabulary road or the NLP road or the conscious language road, just do it. Whether it's with us or someone else, learn more about your words. Learn more about how your words influence you, what you envision, how you feel, how you breathe, and the other people in your life, and develop your skill sets and your communication styles. And when we get that story even just a little bit better, man, everything gets a lot better.
Awesome, brother. Yeah, I 100% agree. And I came into it doing a lot of research on NLP, personal development, language, things like that. And it's definitely a language master course. I haven't done or experienced anything at a higher level. I learned some of those core concepts through neuro-linguistic programming, which
Mm.
I also think that everyone should, if you have an opportunity, there's a basics of
Yep.
NLP book.
Yes, it's
You know what
great.
I mean? Basics of NLP, do that. If you want to do a full master course, do it. But it's the same idea. And when we can take control of our language and our thinking, we can then construct our reality because we are creators. One of the reasons for having the podcast is just want everyone to remember that you can create your own reality. You are an infinite being. We are learning. It's not easy, but we can do it. And whatever you want to do and create, believe in yourself, and go for it. And these are tools and systems. We're all learning together. When you figure out a little coding of the matrix, you can share that with me and I can figure out a little bit of coding. Maybe it was snowboarding or the fitness tip, from Pavel
Mm.
Tatsulin, who brought it to me, who brings it to you, and we're sharing the information. It's like, look, this worked for me. It seems to be working for others. You give it a try too, and it empowers people. So really, really beautiful work, man. Thank you so much for coming on. I
I would like
appreciate
to
getting
touch
to know you a
on
lot more.
a couple of other things
Yeah,
that you
go for it.
mentioned. So if someone has the thought, or you hear one of your friends, maybe verbalize, say something like, well, I'm just not creative. Take out
Mm.
creative and put in creating. I'm not creating. Really? Not creating what? Emotions, feelings? Well, yes, I am. Okay. So take out the not. I am creating, and go with that. The difference between I'm not create people that the people that are talked about as being creative, those are the people that are creating the kind of lifestyles that they want. And the people that are not creating the kind of lifestyles that they want, they say, oh, I'm not creative. So get more involved in the process of what we create, and you will identify yourself, identity, as more creative. And then that compounds itself and snowballs, and things get really fun there. And I want to give two shout outs. One to Daniel Raphael, Wizard in Arms.
Yeah, yeah, man.
Yeah, super cool guy, man. I've known that guy for several years. And then Christoph Zellweger. Both of them speak very highly of you. And and to end on this note, my car got stolen this morning, and as it took me about 4 seconds to register it. Guess what? The thing's gone. What do I have control over? My car getting stolen? No. My story about my car getting stolen? Yes. That's what I script. And after my presentation, I was driving back across town, across the James River, and I verbalized this. I said, "How great of a day can I have today? How great of a day can I have today?" I said it in several different ways to make sure I heard me. And guess what kind of a day I'm having, Matt Belair?
Yeah,
A
man.
great one.
Awesome. Yeah,
Thanks,
man.
dude. Seriously, thanks for having me on. Thanks for everybody for listening and tuning in. And yeah, we appreciate you.
Awesome, man. Yeah, I appreciate you. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Amazing story, dude. I love that. Everything about this was epic. So thank you for the course, for being who you are, man, and putting out lots of love, man. It was a pleasure.
Dude, my pleasure.
See you guys.